All right, let's talk about something super frustrating. You've got your brand new power station. You're all set for the next power outage, feeling totally prepared. You go to plug in, say, an air conditioner, and just click. The whole thing shuts down. It's maddening, right? And on paper, it makes absolutely no sense. Well, today, we're going to get to the bottom of exactly why that happens.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Here's the puzzle we need to solve. You have this beefy 1800-watt power station. And over here, you have your window air conditioner, which the label says only needs 670 watts. I mean, do the math. The power station should handle that no problem, with tons of power to spare. But the second you flick that switch, bam, it trips. The power station loses. How is that even possible?
And you know what? The answer is right here. The real culprit has nothing to do with the power your AC needs to run. It's not about that steady hum. Nope. The entire problem comes down to this massive but totally invisible burst of power that it needs for just a split second, just to get started.
So to really get a handle on this, we're going to use an analogy that I think makes it super clear. It's all about bicycles and motors.
I want you to picture this. You're on a bike at a complete dead stop. You know that feeling of that very first push on the pedal. You kind of have to stand up, throw all your weight into it. It's a real grunt, a struggle against inertia. That first push is, without a doubt, the hardest part of the entire ride. But then, what happens? The second you're rolling, it's a completely different story. You can sit back down, the pedaling gets easy, it's just a nice, steady cruise. It takes way, way less effort to just keep your speed up. That huge initial effort, it's just gone. So you've got this tale of two totally different efforts. And this is where it all clicks into place. That first hard push on the pedal, that's your startup spike. That's what it takes to get things started. And that easy breezy cruise, that's the steady power, what it takes to just stay on. And now we can translate that directly to electricity. That first big push, that's what we call surge watts. It's this massive but super brief demand for power just to get a motor spinning. And the easy cruising, that's your running watts, the much lower, steady power it needs to just keep on running. Your power station is tripping because it can't handle that initial surge, even though it has plenty of power for the run.
Okay, for anyone who wants to peek under the hood at the actual physics, there's this really cool concept called back EMF. Just think of it like electrical momentum. Once a motor is spinning, it actually generates its own force that pushes back a little, and that's what limits the power it draws. But at the very beginning, at startup, there's zero momentum, no back EMF. So the motor is just greedy. It gulps down every bit of power it can possibly get its hands on.
Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. Not everything surges. Different devices have totally different surge signatures, and knowing which is the key to all of this.
Check this out, because it's the perfect example. Let's imagine two different devices that both say 1500 watts on the box. First up, a space heater. This is what we call a resistive load. All it does is make heat. Simple. Its startup watts are the same as its running watts. 1500 to start, 1500 to run. No surge at all. But then you have an air compressor. It also runs at 1500 watts, but its startup demand could be 5 times that or even more. We're talking about a massive surge. Same running watts, but a totally different beast at startup. And listen, that 5 times number, I'm not just making that up. 5.15x. That is a real, measured surge from a common pancake air compressor. That is a gigantic difference you absolutely have to plan for.
All right, let's look at some real data from the manufacturers themselves. This isn't just theory, this is the real deal. Look at that air compressor. Runs at about 1600 watts, but to start, it spikes to over 8,300 watts. That's insane. Or a big central AC unit, over 5 times surge. Even our little window AC unit from the beginning, it runs at 670 watts, but needs over 2,000 to kick on. Then you look all the way at the bottom, the good old space heater. 1500 running, 1500 surge, a perfect 1-to-1 ratio. This table right here is exactly why you can never ever just look at the running watts on the label.
You know, you'll hear people give you a rule of thumb, something like, oh, just multiply the running watts by 3 and you'll be fine. But I love this quote, which is based on the National Electrical Code. It says that 3x multiplier is a floor, not a ceiling. What does that mean? It means 3 times is the absolute bare minimum you should plan for. As we just saw with our own eyes, the real world can be way, way higher than that, especially with compressors.
Okay, so now for the most important part. What do you actually do with this information? How do you make sure you pick the right gear? Let's talk about how to size for that spike. Here's a really easy way to think about it. Just ask yourself these questions. First, does it have a motor?
If the answer's no, like for a space heater, you can basically forget about surge. Easy. Second, is it a power tool, like a saw or a drill? Figure on a surge of 2 to 3 times its running watts. But third, and this is the big one, is it a compressor or a pump? You know, your AC, your fridge, your sump pump. For those, you've got to assume a huge surge, like 4 to 6 times. And then, just to be safe, add another 25% on top as a buffer.
Now, if you're tired of guessing and you want the real number, here's the secret code you need to look for. LRA. It stands for locked rotor amperage, and it's usually printed right on the device's info plate. LRA isn't an estimate, it's literally the measurement of the current the motor draws at that instant of startup. You find that number, multiply it by the voltage, like 120 volts in the US, and boom, you've got the exact surge wattage. No more guesswork.
But wait, there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's the one that gets a lot of people. Because in a real-world scenario, you're not just starting one thing from zero. The real acid test for your whole system is when your biggest, baddest surge hog of an appliance tries to kick on while other stuff is already running.
And this chart lays it out perfectly. Imagine this. Your fridge and a few lights are already on, just humming along, drawing about 300 watts. That's your baseline. Then, boom, the sump pump needs to start. It doesn't just need its own surge. It needs that massive 3,381 watt spike on top of the 300 watts you're already using. So for that one split second, your total demand skyrockets to almost 3,700 watts. That's the peak number your power station has to be able to handle.
All right, so let's boil this all down. What are the key things you absolutely have to remember? First, it's the surge watts, not the running watts, that decide if something will even start. Second, always look at your power station's peak rating. That's the number that matters for surge. The continuous rating is for running things. Third, remember that compressors and pumps are your biggest enemies here. They have the nastiest surges. And last but not least, for anything truly critical, like a sump pump or a medical device, always build in a safety buffer. Don't cut it close. So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought to chew on. Picture it. The power's out, a big storm is rolling in, and your fridge is already running on your power station. Is your system ready for that critical moment when the sump pump has to start? Because now you know, understanding this stuff isn't just for tech geeks. It could literally be the difference between a dry basement and a total disaster.